So, you're picturing yourself as a Viking. Axe, longship, a beard the sea gods personally envy. Cute. Statistically, you're not swinging that axe. You're the cargo, the thing on the ship that gets sold at the other end. And if being sold sounds like the worst of it, oh, stick around. I'll tell you what they did with people like you at the funeral. Let's fix your fantasy. That everyone was a fearsome warrior thing you're picturing? Also fantasy. The Viking Age had a shockingly small number of actual raiders, and a whole lot more of the other guy. Today, you're the other guy. Congratulations. And yes, the horned helmet is a myth. A costume designer bolted horns onto the Vikings for a Wagner opera in the 1870s. No Viking ever wore one into battle. Moving on. Because 4 flavors of misery are waiting for you, and I'd like to serve them while they're hot. Flavor 1. You're just poor. Roll the historical dice, and you most likely come up a carl, a free farmer. And free is doing an enormous amount of lifting in that sentence. You're scratching barley out of thin, cold soil, praying the summer lasts long enough that you don't starve to death. You're not sailing to Paris for treasure. You're standing in a field, losing an argument to a goat. The raiders, the ones with the ships and the songs, are a thin sliver at the top. You are the wide, muddy base of the pyramid that grows their food and dies of a cough. Glory is a spectator sport, and you're not in the stands. You're the guy raking the field afterward. And here's the part that should worry you. This is the good outcome. Because there's a rung below poor farmer, and a huge chunk of Norse society lived on it. Flavor 2. Thralldom. A thrall was a slave, and this wasn't some shameful little footnote, it was the business model. The Viking economy ran on slavery the way ours runs on caffeine and unpaid interns. A wealthy farm might own dozens of thralls. Congratulations, that's your new job title. And raiding wasn't just about grabbing gold and silver. A massive point of it was grabbing people. You were never the shopper, you were the inventory. You'd be sold at a bustling international market, Hedeby or Dublin. Yeah, that Dublin. Before it was pubs and poets, it was one of the biggest slave markets in Viking Age Europe. Cheerful little origin story. Somewhere out there, a Norse trader is haggling over you like you're a used lawnmower. Does it come with a warranty? No, it does not. And how did you end up on that block? Maybe you got snatched off a foreign beach in a raid. Maybe you were a debtor who couldn't pay, so you became the payment. Or, my personal favorite, maybe you were just born into it, because thrall children were thralls automatically. You can inherit slavery the way other people inherit a nose. Flavor 3. You are, legally, furniture. As a thrall, you weren't a person with rights. You were property. Chattel. Bought, sold, traded, handed over as a gift. Happy Yule, here's a human. And now the part that should make your stomach drop. In the law codes we have, and fair warning, most of them were written down a bit later in Norway and Iceland, a free person had a vergild, a man price, a literal, legal value. Kill a free man, and you owed his family a hefty fine. A thrall? No vergild at all. If a stranger killed your thrall, he didn't owe a blood price to a grieving family. He just reimbursed the owner, exactly as if he'd killed your ox. And if your own master decided to kill you, in much of the surviving lore, that cost him essentially nothing. You were his property to break. Somewhere, a lawyer just fainted, so you keep your head down. You take the worst jobs on the farm, hauling, grinding, mucking out, in the freezing dark, and you sleep wherever you rank, which is low, below the family, roughly level with the storage barrels. If I just survive long enough, you tell yourself, maybe I earn my way out. Flavor 4, and this is the one I told you to wait for. Sit down, because the reveal isn't the market, and it isn't the law. It's the funeral. In the year 922, an Arab diplomat named Ibn Fadlan watched the funeral of a chieftain of the Rus, Norsemen trading down the Volga, and, unlike everyone else standing there, he wrote it down. So no, this isn't slander invented to make Vikings look bad. They handled that part themselves. When a great man died, they didn't just bury his sword and his horse. They asked which of his slaves would volunteer to be buried with him, and a girl was chosen. For days, they treated her like royalty, and then, at the end, she was drugged and killed so she could be laid in the ship beside a corpse, not as a wife, as an amenity. Because heaven forbid a dead warlord make his own bed. Worst performance review in history, and she never even applied for the job. And before you comfort yourself with, well, that's one weird story from one traveler, archaeologists keep digging up graves that fit. A high-status body laid to rest with a second person who was beheaded or bound. At Flakstad, in Norway, the extra bodies ate a poorer diet their entire lives, exactly what you'd expect of slaves. At the Trelleborg fortress in Denmark, decapitated bodies turn up in the graves. Scholars still argue over the details, but the pattern keeps showing up. You weren't just property in life, you were grave goods. You were something they packed for the trip. So don't comfort yourself with the exit either, because freedom was a lie too. But wait, you say, still clinging. Thralls could be freed. There was manumission. Sure, there was. And here's the twist that ties this miserable little bow. Getting freed didn't make you free. A freed thrall became a leisingi, a freedman, and you stayed legally tied to your old owner's household, still owing him, still ranked beneath everyone born free. It wasn't a door swinging open, it was a slightly longer leash. And climbing all the way up to real, independent freedom? That often took generations. You plant the tree, your grandkids maybe sit in the shade. You get splinters and a nice view of the tree. Great tree, though. So no, you would not be a Viking. The Viking is a rounding error, the guy in the songs. You'd be the farmer feeding him, the captive filling his ship, or the object in his grave. History didn't hand out axes to everybody. Mostly, it handed out shovels, and every so often, it handed the shovel to somebody else and told them where to dig you in. The axe and longship dream turns out to be the worst job listing ever written. No pay, no exit, and the retirement package is a knife. If your fragile modern self somehow survived being medieval loot, don't get comfortable. The past has plenty more careers that would have killed you. Subscribe, and let's keep discovering all the ways you were statistically doomed. You're doing great. You're still alive. For a video, anyway.